At 24, he had nothing left, no job, no money, no reputation, only the laughter of those who once called him friend ringing in his ears like a funeral bell. And in that suffocating darkness, he made one terrifying decision that would either destroy him completely or forge him into the youngest self-made billionaire his nation had ever seen. What was that decision? Imagine a young man named Alex, standing on the edge of everything he once believed defined him. A promising career shattered by a brutal layoff. A startup he poured his soul into, now bankrupt and ridiculed in every business circle, creditors pounding on his door while former mentors turned their backs and whispered that he had been nothing more than an overconfident kid chasing illusions. His bank account read negative, his phone was cut off, his tiny apartment was days away from eviction, and the weight of failure pressed so heavily on his chest that sleep became impossible and every sunrise felt like mockery. Yet something ancient stirred inside him, a primal instinct buried beneath layers of modern comfort and safety nets, the same instinct that once drove conquerors across oceans and warriors into battles they could not afford to lose. It whispered a single, terrifying truth. As long as he still had a way out, as long as he kept one foot in the old life, one emergency exit, one plan B, he would never summon the ferocity required to win at the level destiny was now demanding. So on a rain-soaked night, with trembling hands and a heart pounding like war drums, Alex made the decision that would become legend in his own mind before it ever became legend in the world. He decided to burn the boats. Not literally, though the metaphor cut deeper than any flame could. He deleted every backup resume, blocked the phone numbers of everyone who had ever offered him a safety net job, sold the last possessions that could have funded a soft retreat, gave away the final dollars that might have bought him another month of hesitation, and publicly declared on every platform he could reach that he was all in on his new venture with no retreat, no excuses, and no possibility of crawling back to the life that had already rejected him. He severed every rope, burned every bridge back to mediocrity, and in doing so transformed desperation into rocket fuel. From that moment forward, failure was no longer an option. It was death. And because death stood behind him with a blade at his throat, he moved with a speed and clarity that bordered on the supernatural. He worked 18, 20, 22 hours a day, not out of discipline alone, but because the alternative was annihilation. He cold-called 1,000 leads with a ferocity that terrified even seasoned salespeople. He learned skills overnight that others spent years mastering because slowing down meant surrendering to the abyss. He negotiated deals with the cold-eyed conviction of a man who had nothing left to lose and therefore could not be intimidated, manipulated, or bought off. Where others saw obstacles, he saw only the next step because looking left or right might remind him of the escape routes he had deliberately destroyed. Months bled into a blur of relentless execution, sleepless nights coding in a freezing room lit by a single dying bulb, days spent pitching to investors who laughed until they saw the fire in his eyes that promised he would rather die than quit, weeks of eating nothing but instant noodles while pouring every cent of early revenue back into growth, and slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, momentum began to shift. A small contract here, a viral product feature there, a partnership that no one thought a broke 24-year-old could land, and then the inflection point arrived like a thunderclap. A major corporation signed on as his anchor client, the same corporation that had once employed him and fired him without ceremony, and within weeks the revenue curve bent upward so sharply it looked like a hockey stick drawn by a madman. By age 27, 3 brutal years after burning his boats, Alex stood atop a company valued at over $1 billion. The youngest self-made billionaire in the country's history, featured on magazine covers not for being a prodigy or inheriting wealth, but for the sheer audacity of his refusal to accept defeat as an option. And when reporters asked him wide-eyed what the secret was, he gave them only 4 words: "I burned the boats." That is the turning point, the moment of profound realization that changes everything, not just for Alex, but for anyone listening who feels the cold breath of despair on their neck. Total desperation, when harnessed rather than feared, becomes the greatest accelerator known to humankind. When every escape hatch is sealed, the human mind stops negotiating with possibility and starts commanding reality. Creativity explodes because invention is now survival. Resilience hardens into something unbreakable because surrender equals oblivion. Focus narrows to a laser because distraction is a luxury reserved for those who still have tomorrow to waste. History is littered with these stories. Cortez scuttling his ships on the shores of the New World so his men would fight like demons, entrepreneurs who max out their last credit card with no safety net, artists who move to the big city with one suitcase and a promise to make it or disappear, because the pattern is eternal. Moderate pressure creates moderate results, but absolute commitment creates miracles. So here is the moral, the set of actionable principles you can apply the moment this video ends. First, identify your own boats. The comfortable job you're afraid to leave, the toxic relationship you keep as a backup plan, the savings account you refuse to risk, the excuses you rehearse in the mirror, and decide today which ones must burn if you are ever to reach the magnitude you claim to want. Second, make the commitment public and irreversible. Tell the world your goal and your deadline in a way that failing would be more painful than the struggle itself, because social consequence is the modern equivalent of fire at your back. Third, embrace the terror. Do not numb it with distractions or soften it with half measures. Let the fear course through your veins until it alchemizes into raw, unstoppable energy. Fourth, move faster than feels sane. When the boats are ash, hesitation is treason. Act, iterate, ship, sell, learn, repeat at triple speed because time is no longer a resource. It is the enemy trying to kill you before you reach the shore. And finally, remember that the greatest lie ever sold is that safety creates greatness. The truth carved in the lives of every legend who ever rose from nothing is that only when the retreat is impossible does the advance become legendary. You do not need more time, more money, more permission. You need a moment like Alex's, a moment where you look failure square in the eye and declare with every cell in your body that there is no way out but through. Burn the boats, my friend. The shore of your own billion-dollar destiny, or whatever magnitude of greatness is calling your name, is closer than you think. But you will never reach it paddling with one hand while clinging to the dock with the other. Make the terrifying decision. Light the match, and watch how fast a human being can move when the only alternative is to burn.